Hello, good evening, and thank you for joining today's webinar on the Lower Thames Crossing Design Refinement Consultation. Today, we're going to be providing you with an overview of the proposed refinements to the Lower Thames Crossing, with a particular focus on refinements in Thurrock and Essex. Now, to be clear, this isn't an exhaustive overview of every single proposed refinement. Rather, we're providing you with an overview of some of the more notable ones made to our proposals since our supplementary consultation earlier on this year. So first of all, we'll start off by introducing ourselves, and as you will see, we are all in line with COVID-19 guidelines. We're all working from home, and if we do get the occasional interruption or indeed neighbours cutting grass, as they have been just a few seconds ago here, then I apologise for that, but I'm sure you'll appreciate under the circumstances we're all working from home. So we'll start by introducing ourselves. My name's Sarah Walker. I'm the Communications and Engagement Lead for Highways England, and I'm going to be moderating today's session.
Hello everyone, I'm Steve Roberts. I'm the Engineering Design Lead for Lower Thames Crossing, and I'll be running through many of our proposed refinements today, as well as helping to answer your questions a little later on.
Hi, I'm Gary Hodge, the Technical Lead for Lower Thames Crossing, and I'll be helping to answer many of your questions today as well with Steve.
And we've also got Duncan and Faith with us today, who, as you can see on camera throughout the webinar, they are British Sign Language interpreters, and they'll be providing sign language translation for those in attendance who are deaf or have hearing impairments. Should you wish to expand the view of the BSL interpreters at any time, all you have to do is hover your mouse over their camera and click the button to expand. Similarly, should you wish to turn off the BSL interpreter video, then just hover your mouse over their camera and click the X, as you would expect. Lastly, we have our colleague David, who's helping us behind the scenes to ensure this webinar gets to your screen. So in case we have any technical difficulties, which we don't, you may hear one of us asking him for some help and progress as the webinar moves forward. So today we're going to be providing you with an introduction to the Lower Thames Crossing project, give you an overview of why we're consulting again. We'll also let you know
David, I've lost sound.
Sarah, we've actually lost feed.
Ask a question at any time today, please look on your screen for a question mark button or click the field that says questions. And just so you know, you can then type in your question at any point during today's webinar. We'll be getting to your questions after we run you through the proposed refinements. Your questions, of course, will only be visible to you and the project team here at the webinar. We may not have time to get to everybody's questions today, so if your question does go unanswered, we would encourage you to book a callback using our telephone surgery service, and callbacks can be booked on our website, and the website address for that is www.lowerthamescrossing.co.uk/design-consultation. Or of course you can call us, and the number for that is 0300 123 5000. So I'm now going to take a brief opportunity to give you an overview of the Lower Thames Crossing project. It's a proposed new road connecting Kent, Thurrock and Essex through two 2.6-mile tunnels beneath the River Thames. It would almost double road capacity across the river east of London, boosting local, regional and national economies, while offering new connections, better journey and of course fewer delays. On the south side of the River Thames, the new road would link to the A2 and M2 in Kent, and on the north side, it would link to the A13 in Thurrock and the M25 in Havering. We're proposing a number of refinements to the design of the Lower Thames Crossing based on feedback received during previous consultations, engagement with our stakeholders, and of course ongoing design work. We've now got a much better understanding of technical constraints, including new information from existing utilities. Some of the proposed refinements include reduction to the overall size of the development boundary, minor changes to highways design, updated paths for pedestrians, cyclists and horse riders, fewer utilities diversions, more detailed landscaping proposals, and further developed ecological mitigation measures. You can, of course, respond to the consultation in several ways, either through our website, by post, or by email. If you know anyone who doesn't have internet access, they're also able to call us on 0300 123 5000 to provide a response to the consultation over the phone. So we'll now go straight into the refinements with a short video that will show you the changes south to north along the section of the route we're covering today. Based on feedback from previous consultations, engagement with our stakeholders, design, development and new technical data, we're now proposing a number of refinements to the design of the Lower Thames Crossing. We're currently holding a further round of consultation, which means that until 11:59 p.m. on the 12th of August 2020, you'll have the opportunity to view and comment on our latest proposals. Your feedback is vitally important in making sure we get all aspects of the design, the construction and the operation of the scheme right, and your responses will play a fundamental role in firming up our plans for the Lower Thames Crossing. In this video, I want to give you a brief introduction into some of the key design refinements we're proposing in Thurrock and Essex. Because we've refined the design of utility diversions in areas along the route, it means our overall development boundary, which is the land we need to construct the scheme, has reduced in size. This means that the number of properties inside the development boundary has nearly halved. You can see more details on this in our consultation documents online and in our virtual exhibition. If your property is in or near the development boundary, we will have written to you directly, but if you've got any questions, please do get in touch. Around the northern tunnel entrance near Tilbury, we're proposing to install utilities that would provide a power supply to the tunnel boring machine and northern tunnel entrance during and following construction. A new water supply for the tunnel boring machine and construction site area would also be required. This supply would come from the Linford borehole and a local water main. We're also proposing earthworks which would create a new landform design around the tunnel entrance and provide wide-ranging views overlooking the Thames estuary. Following feedback from landowners and stakeholders, the maintenance access tracks around the northern tunnel entrance would be moved closer to the Lower Thames Crossing. This is to allow for a shorter culvert length, which would minimise the impact on the local ecology and allow wildlife to navigate through the culvert more easily. 2 footpaths in the area would also be slightly realigned, and a new shared path along the south of Muckingford Road would also be progressed. This would allow for better connectivity between Chadwell St Mary and East Tilbury. Near the A13 junction in Orsett, we're now proposing a new area of land for the relocation of the Travellers site. This would be adjacent to its current location with access off Gammonfields Way. As part of our woodland planting proposals, we've identified 2 separate areas off Baker Street that we would look to make accessible to the public. Due to the essential realignment of a watercourse, we're proposing to remove a false cutting that we previously proposed in a section of the route between the A128 Brentwood Road and Howford Road. So we're now developing other ways to help conceal the Lower Thames Crossing. Further details on this can be found in our consultation maps and documents online. As part of our utility proposals, we're planning a new permanent compound at Stanford Road, just to the east of Orsick Roundabout. This would be required for the operation and maintenance of a proposed gas pipeline, which would supply the local community. In the vicinity of the Mardyke, we're proposing permanent access from Green Lane for the national grid. This is so it could maintain overhead electricity transmission cables during the diversion works and afterwards for the operation of the network. North of Thames Chase Forest Centre, we're proposing a new maintenance access track and a multi-utilities diversion. We've located these within the same area to limit the reduction in woodland compensation that would be required to accommodate these changes. Around junction 29 of the M25 within the vicinity of the B186 North Road, some above and below ground multi-utilities would need to be diverted to facilitate the proposed route. Full details about these utilities proposals can be found in consultation maps and documents online. We've been exploring solutions to maintain connectivity over the A127 and propose a new footbridge which would link the existing routes. We've carried out detailed noise assessments and have identified locations along the route where noise barriers could be used to reduce the sound of traffic for local communities. Further details on these proposed locations of noise barriers can be found in our consultation documents and maps online and in our virtual exhibition. These are just some of the design refinements we're consulting on. To view and comment on all the latest proposals, please visit the Lower Thames Crossing website, explore our online exhibition, and of course follow us on Facebook and Twitter for updates. This consultation is an important opportunity for you to have your say before we submit our development consent order application later on this year. So please do submit a response online, by free post, email, or simply by calling us. Thank you for watching.
Hello everyone, it's Steve Roberts here again. Apologies if some of you may have lost sound for Sarah at the beginning of her presentation like I did, and apologies if that was the same for you. I think all you missed, if you did lose sound, was that Sarah was inviting you to ask questions anytime throughout the webinar. You can submit them in various ways, and I'm sure you've worked out how to do that by now. Okay, so to complement the video you just watched, we'll now run through the refinements in a little more depth. We'll start off by covering some key themes regarding the development boundary, the environmental impacts, landscaping and utilities. And then we'll dive into the refinements on a junction by junction basis. So we'll start by discussing the development boundary. Okay, so we have the development boundary map on the screen right now, and we've been able to reduce the amount of land required by around 12.5%, and this is by refining the design of the utility diversions in some areas along the route. Within this revised development boundary, there is now some additional land that will be required permanently, whereas other areas like construction sites will only be needed temporarily. Any land that's required temporarily will be reinstated and returned to its owner once construction is complete. If your property is affected by the scheme, you should have been written to already. And if you've received a letter, please feel free to give us a call to discuss it on 0300 123 5000. That's 0300 123 5000. Okay, on to environmental impacts now. So following feedback from our supplementary consultation, we've been able to refine the land required for utility diversions, as I mentioned. In doing so, we've been able to reduce the impacts to various wooded areas. With regards to green bridges, we've managed to improve our landscaping proposals, resulting in better opportunity for ecological connectivity. This means that we have now consolidated the green space on the bridges, which feature vegetation, like shrubs, trees, grassland, hedgerows, etc. And this makes it more attractive for wildlife to use as a crossing point over the given road. To help mitigate noise, we've introduced some noise barriers in areas where higher noise levels and disturbance is anticipated. These barriers vary in length and height along the route. To learn more about specific noise barriers, please refer to the Design Refinement Consultation Guidebook, which is available on the Lower Thames Crossing website. And now on to landscaping. As we've progressed the design of Lower Thames Crossing, we've also developed more detailed landscaping proposals to mitigate the visual impacts of the project's above ground infrastructure. Since supplementary consultation, we've added more detail on the specific type of ecological mitigation proposed across the route, such as grassland, woodlands, and further refinements around watercourses. And we've also updated various areas of the landform and provided some new viewpoints. Turning now to our utility proposals, we've continued to refine our proposals for the utility diversions across the route, and we're now proposing some further changes to the position presented at supplementary consultation. One of the more notable updates includes the need for various small substations along the route. These would be approximately 3 meters by 3 meters long and around 2.5 meters in height. The number and location of these substations will be confirmed following further design work and continued engagement with our stakeholders. Okay, so now we'll dive into the refinements north of the Thames, beginning with Tilbury area and the area around the Northern Tunnel entrance. So the image on screen right now is the Northern Tunnel entrance near Tilbury as presented at supplementary consultation. And next we'll put on screen the image that we're now, the image that shows our proposals at this design refinement consultation so that you can see the difference. We're just going to switch between the two. Thank you. So I'll now try and explain those changes in a little more detail. Turning first to landscaping in this area, as indicated by point 1 on the image, a new landform with footpaths will lead up to elevated viewpoints looking out to the south, east and west, from where Coal House and Tilbury forts will be visible. The landform design will be created using excavated material from the tunnel, and the surrounding area will be restored for agricultural purposes in keeping with the existing land use in this area. With regards to utility proposals in this area, to supply temporary utilities to the construction site and permanent supplies to the Northern Tunnel entrance, some works will be required that sit approximately 1.5 kilometres outside of the development boundary that was presented at supplementary consultation. Staying in the same area, we're now showing another angle of the Northern Tunnel entrance as presented at supplementary consultation. And again, we'll switch between this image and the one showing our proposals for the design refinement consultation so you can see the difference. Thank you. Next slide, please. Moving now to noise barriers. These are shown as points 1A through to 1C on the image. The Tilbury area will feature 4 noise barriers as part of our noise mitigation efforts. If you'd like to learn specifics about these barriers, please see the Guide to Design Refinement Consultation, which is on our exhibition website. Next, on to paths for walkers, cyclists and horse riders. These are shown as numbers 2A and 2B on the image. The path closest to us is footpath 200, and the path furthest east, closest to East Tilbury, is footpath 61. The footpath 61 has been slightly amended to use more of the existing footpath and to follow the existing field boundary. This refinement reduces the amount of land that will be required permanently in this area. Footpath 200 will be diverted around the edge of the field rather than pass through it, as was proposed at supplementary consultation, and this will connect with the existing footpath at either end. This proposal is closer to the original alignment. So taking a closer look at the paths in this area, we've marked the refinements to footpaths 61 and 200 in purple on the map on screen now. Existing paths are shown in green, and what was previously presented at supplementary consultation is shown in orange. You can also see where we've made refinements shown by the dotted X's. These refinements reduce the amount of land that will be required permanently in this area. Moving on to utilities in the Tilbury area, as the tunnel boring machine would need a water supply to assist with the excavation process, we're proposing two routes to gain access to water using the Linford borehole as well as a local water main located near Fort Road and Gun Hill. Details of where we propose to route the water mains can be found in the Guide to Design Refinement consultation. In addition to the works described previously, we're also planning on the addition of two substations in the areas surrounding the northern tunnel entrance, and these again are described in more detail in the guide. So just to recap on the refinements I've just covered in the previous section, the map on screen, which by the way is also on pages 44 to 45 of the Design Refinement Consultation Guide. Starting with number 5 on the map, you can see where we propose the lookout over the River Thames estuary that we discussed earlier. Moving on to utility diversions, points 6 through to 9 show some of the utility diversions we're proposing. Point 6 in particular shows the new alignment to connect the water supply from Linford borehole to the construction site and the tunnel boring machine. Finally, points 10 through to 13 show the proposed locations of noise barriers in this area. Okay, so now we'll dive into the refinements around the Orsett-Cock roundabout near the A13 junction. I've just been reminded actually that just to remind everyone that you feel free to ask any questions that you wish to at any time throughout this webinar. Yeah, feel free to send those through when you're ready to do so, and we'll move straight on to the next section. So on the screen right now is the A13 junction as presented at supplementary consultation, and we'll switch between this image and the one showing our proposals for this design refinements consultation so you can see the difference. Thank you. So now going into the detail. Firstly, with regards to the traveller's site in this area, following further design work and feedback from our supplementary consultation, we're now proposing a new site adjacent to its current location with access off Gammon Fields Way. The traveller's site would remain approximately 1.5 hectares in area, which is the same as it is now, with an additional 1.5 hectares set aside for appropriate access and landscaping. This is shown as number 1 on the image on screen. Moving to design refinements at the junction itself, the A13 junction, we propose some changes to the merge layouts here as shown by number 2 on the image on screen. So where the A13 westbound and the A1089 northbound slip join the LTC northbound, our modelling has shown that more heavy goods vehicles would join Lower Thames Crossing northbound from the A1089, so a different merge layout will be required. Also, where the slip road from the Orsett-Cock roundabout joins the existing A13 westbound, there's a slight increase in forecast traffic flows, meaning a different merge layout will be needed there as well. Next, we've also proposed the removal of a false cutting, or a sloped embankment, some may call it, between the A128 Brentford Road and Howford Road. And this because it was in the same location as a watercourse, which also required realigning to avoid Lower Thames crossing. So removing this sloped embankment will mean losing some visual and noise screening, so fencing and additional planting are proposed to help conceal Lower Thames crossing. Onto utilities, we currently propose 7 small substations in the vicinity of the A13 junction. These would be approximately 3 metres by 3 metres in size, with a total area of 5 metres by 4 metres. If you'd like to know the specific locations of these substations, you can find more details in the Guide to Design Refinement consultation. For walkers, cyclists and horse riders, at supplementary consultation, we were exploring the feasibility of a new footpath connection under the A13 junction. But following further investigation, it was determined that this route was not in a desirable location due to its close proximity to the high-speed traffic. As a result, the open space to the north of the A13 that was proposed in supplementary consultation is no longer included in our plans, as it would not be accessible. Just taking a closer look at paths in this area, we've marked the newest proposed refinements in purple, with existing paths in green and what was shown at supplementary consultation in orange. You can also see where we've made refinements shown by the dotted X's. Number 1 on this plan shows the shared path proposed at supplementary consultation between Green Lane and Stifford Clays Road, which will be amended so it's slightly closer to Lower Thames Crossing to avoid impacting farmland. And number 2 shows what was discussed on the previous slide, where we're no longer progressing with a shared path under the A13 due to its close proximity to the A13 and slip roads. Moving now to woodlands, shown as number 1 on this image. As part of our planting proposals at the A13 junction, we've identified 2 separate woodland areas off Baker Street that we would look to make accessible to the public. For noise barriers, there are 3 proposed noise barriers in this area, as denoted by numbers 2A through to 2C. And also out of frame in this image is a noise barrier located at Brentwood Road. Details on these noise barriers are available in the guide or on our consultation website. So on the screen right now is the Orsett Cock junction near the A13 as we presented it at supplementary consultation. And again, we're going to switch between images, bringing you up to date with our design refinement consultation proposals so you can see the difference. Thank you. So going on to the detail in this area, beginning with noise barriers, these are denoted by 1A and 1B on this slide. There are 2 noise barriers proposed west of Orsett Cock Junction. With regards to utilities, as denoted by number 2 on the image on screen, a permanent compound east of Orsett Cock roundabout along Stanford Road is planned for the operation and maintenance of a proposed gas pipeline in this area. Facility, including equipment, will be located within an area approximately 35 metres by 35 metres, which would include some fencing for security reasons. Access for future maintenance would also be required off Stanford Road. Some land outside the development boundary shown at supplementary consultation would also be required for these works. This means that the development boundary has been extended in this area. At Orsett Showground, part of this site is required permanently for the construction of link roads to the Orsett Cock roundabout on the A13, and we propose to move a gas pipeline, and permanent rights will be required over a limited corridor of land within this site in order to operate and maintain that pipeline. A replacement site for part of the Orsett showground has been proposed within the development boundary, and this is adjacent to the existing showground and denoted by number 2 on the image on screen. So just to recap on that section, we've just covered the area which is actually also shown on pages 56 to 57 and 58 to 59 of the Guide to Design Refinement Consultation, for those of you who've got that. Starting with number 1, the map on screen, this is where we propose changes to the merge layouts owing to new and improved modelling data. Number 2 shows where we are no longer progressing with a shared path under the A13. Number 3 shows where we've proposed the relocation of the Travellers site adjacent to its current location. Number 4 shows where we propose the removal of the false cutting or sloped embankment. Next, number 10 shows the location of wooded areas off Baker Street that we're proposing to make accessible to the public. And finally, numbers 11 through to 18 show the location of noise barriers. Okay, so now we'll cover the refinements in the Mardyke and M25 LTC junction areas. So the image on screen right now is one of the viaducts and embankments in the area of the Mardyke River, which is north of the A13 junction, and this is how we presented it at supplementary consultation. So in this area, denoted by number 1 on the image, we're proposing noise barriers to run along the viaducts and embankment through the Mardyke area on both sides of the road. Details of these noise barriers are available in the guide or on our consultation website. For utilities in this area, National Grid need access to Green Lane for the maintenance of their overhead power lines, and this access will be required during the diversion works for the lines and afterwards for the operation of the network. These works would require the use of some land outside of the development boundary shown at supplementary consultation. By increasing the land for the works required at this location, we have more space and that means that we can avoid impacting existing vegetation. On the screen right now is the LTC M25 junction as seen from 2 perspectives as presented at supplementary consultation. So starting with the image on the left, we're looking at the Lower Thames crossing from the east of North Road Bridge and the area around the wilderness. On the right, the view is showing the Lower Thames crossing joining the M25 northbound with Thames Chase in the foreground. So we'll just switch now between these images and the ones showing our proposals for the design refinement consultation so you can see the difference. Thank you. So now onto the detail in this area. So firstly, we're proposing a noise barrier in the area of the wilderness. This is denoted by the number 1 on the image. Details of those noise barriers, again, are available in the guide, design refinement consultation, or on our exhibition website. With regards to planting, staying in this area, we're proposing to divert a watercourse within the area of the wilderness, and to accommodate this, we're proposing a reduction in the woodland planting in this area. This is shown as number 2 on the image. And finally, utilities. We're currently proposing 1 small substation in this area. Again, please refer to the guide for more specifics on its location. So shown as number 1 on this image, within the area of the Thames Chase Forest, we're proposing a new maintenance access track which will be shared with multi-utility diversion corridor north of Thames Chase Forest Centre. These are located in the same area to minimise the reduction in woodland compensation. And shown as number 2 on this image, we also propose to acquire replacement land to the north and south of Thames Chase Forest Centre. This would be landscaped to match the current site and would connect to existing paths. The replacement land would be designed to complement the existing forest. As part of the mitigation, we propose a footbridge over the Lower Thames Crossing and M25 to improve the connection between the western and eastern sections of the Thames Chase Community Forest. With regards to utilities, a sewer diversion may be required from Ockenden Road to St Mary's Lane via the B186. This is due to the proximity of the existing sewer pipes to the proposed Lower Thames Crossing route and the proposed Ockenden Bridge construction works in this area. That's number 1 on the image on screen. There's also some above and below ground utilities within the vicinity of the B186 North Road, which would need to be diverted to facilitate the proposed Lower Thames Crossing route. Some of the overhead power lines in this area may also need to be placed underground to avoid the proposed Lower Thames Crossing route. So to recap on that last section we've just covered, the map on screen right now is also on pages 70 to 71 and 72 to 73 of the Guide to Design Refinement Consultation. So number 6 on the map shows the location of the sewer diversion works. Number 8 shows where utility works would take place in the vicinity of the B186 North Road. Number 10 on the map points out Thames Chase Community Forest, where we're proposing to reduce the woodland planting to accommodate a new maintenance access track and for utilities. Number 11 shows where reduced woodland planting would take place at the Wilderness as a result of a watercourse diversion. And finally, points 12 through to 14 show the location of noise barriers from the Mardyke area to the Lower Thames Crossing M25 junction. So lastly, we'll take a look at the refinements in the area near and including junction 29 of the M25. So the image on screen right now is junction 29 of the M25 as we presented it at supplementary consultation. Starting with a new footbridge, supplementary consultation, we showed an existing path next to the south side of the A127 that was impacted due to the addition of segregated left turn lanes on and off Lower Thames Crossing. These lanes meant that the existing crossing points to the south of the junction would no longer be feasible. So we now propose a footbridge over the A127 to link the existing routes. Unfortunately, the footbridge is just out of frame on this image, but I'll point it out on the map on the next slide. So as just mentioned, shown as number 2 on the map on screen, this indicates the proposed new footbridge over the A127. Other adjustments to our proposals are shown in the purple colour. So just to recap on that section, which is also on pages 82 and 83 of the Guide to Design Refinement Consultation. Starting with number 1, that shows the proposed location of the footbridge over the A127, which will link the existing facilities in this area. Moving on to number 2, this is where the Folkes Lane gas diversion would take place, for which we require additional land compared to that presented at supplementary consultation. And finally, I'm just going to point out number 5 on the map, which shows where we're proposing to bury some electricity distribution cables, which are near the B186 Whalley Street. And that concludes the presentation, and I'll hand back to Sarah.
Thanks for that run through, Steve. Thank you for the run through of those proposed refinements along the route. I think that was really laid out really clearly. As we mentioned at the start of our webinar, our goal today was to provide you with an overview of some of the more notable refinements made to our proposal since our supplementary consultation. If you'd like more information on any of those proposed refinements, we would suggest that you visit our website, and I'll give you the website address for that. It's www.lowerthamescrossing.co.uk/design-consultation. And there you can also access a digital copy of the guide to this consultation, as well as a host of other consultation materials and maps, etc. Okay, we're going to take a short break now for 3 minutes, and we'll be right back to run through the questions which you submitted before and those which have been coming through thick and fast throughout this event. We'll see you in just a few minutes. Hello and welcome back. Thank you for staying with us during that short break. A quick reminder, the consultation runs until the 12th of August, and aside from this webinar, you can always find out more information on our special consultation website. Using the website or the Highways England contact centre on 0300 123 5000, you can also schedule a callback with a member of the team to ask any questions that you may have regarding any of these refinements. You can also submit a request for some printed consultation materials using these methods. Okay, a quick reminder on how to ask a question, as some of you may have found me on silent when we were going through this earlier. Depending on how you're watching today's webinar, your view may look like one of the three options on the screen. Just look for where the question area is indicated above by the red circle. That's where you type your question. We may not have time to get to everybody's questions today. We'll do our best, but if your question isn't answered, please do book a callback using that telephone surgery service. And callbacks can be booked on the website, or you can call us on 0300 123 5000. Right, we're going to be focusing today's question and answer session on areas of the Lower Thames Crossing proposal that are north of the river. So we're going to begin with our first question, and if you forgive me while I just locate that. Steve, I think this is a question for you. It's a question about on which side of the river will the tunnels be bored from? Steve, would you mind picking that up?
Yep, yeah, sure. So the current intention is that we'll be using 2 tunnel boring machines to drive from the north to the south. It's possible that one will be used and then brought back to the north side, but the intention is to drive from north to south for both tunnels. So there'll be a large compound around the northern tunnel entrance where the tunnelling activities will happen, and all the and associated support functions will sit. There's quite a lot of information about this within the statutory and supplementary consultation guide. So if you wanted to know more about how the tunnel is going to be built, you can look there, which is on the Highways England website under Lower Thames Crossing.
Thank you for that, Steve. I know that's a question that's come up before and one that intrigues people. We've had a few questions come in about individual land and property matters. As we said earlier, to protect the confidentiality of everybody who's involved in land and property discussions, we can't answer those on this webinar. It's not something we can discuss in a public forum, but we do have a dedicated land and property team. And I would encourage you to give them a call using our telephone surgery service. If it's quite simple to place a call, and we will get one of our specialist team from the land and property team to call you back. So you can either email on info@lowerthamescrossing.co.uk or give us a call on that number that we've mentioned a couple of times, 0300 123 5000. So that's just a reminder for anybody who's asked land and property questions. It won't be something that we're able to handle this evening. Okay, another question's come in. This is about the A13 junction. Gary, this might be one for you. Will the junction with the A13 still make, and I'm so sorry, it's just disappeared off my screen. I will get back to it. Will the junction with the A13 still make the 3 lanes back to 2? Can this not be improved, seeing as we've been through all the grief making the 2 lanes up to 3 at great cost? That's a question there. About the A13. Gary, can you pick that up?
Yes, of course. Good evening, everybody. With the A13, the section that's been widened is from Orsett Cock up to Manor Way, which is currently being done under the Thurrock scheme. So that's being widened out from 2 lanes to 3 lanes, and it's mainly to sort of feed the Thames Gateway port down through the A13. The section we will be making. A section of the A13 junction is from 3 lanes back down to 2, but it's within the junction. It's normal practice to do that. The sections that we're going to be doing is in between the A1089 and the Orsett Cock roundabout, and it's if you're coming out of London, so going eastbound towards Southend, we have a slip road that comes off. That goes up to Orsett Cock roundabout. So what we get is what we call a lane drop. And from that point onwards, there's a section where the Lower Thames Crossing north and southbound link road will join onto the A13. And we have to have a lane gain. The merge type has to be a lane gain, otherwise it's a departure. So in fact, what would happen is we'd have to go to 4 lanes beyond that if we weren't. But the traffic on that section there, it's about 400 meters long, that's all. would be reduced to two lanes, and vice versa. Going back into London again, where we've got the slip road going off to LTC, so a lot of traffic coming off the A13, and the traffic from Orsitt Cock at this stage rejoining the A13. There's about a 600-metre length that would go down to the 2 lanes. But again, if you look at any sort of highway junction, you often get a lane drop and a lane gain.
Gary, before you finish that question, can you just briefly explain what you mean when you talk about a departure? We can't do something, otherwise it would be a departure. What does that mean? Right,
so a departure from the standard isn't necessarily a bad thing, actually. It's really just pushing the standards. So, and in fact, what it means is that if you don't comply with the standards precisely, you have to then go and speak to the safety division with Highways England and get agreement with them to go ahead with that particular design. But you also, even if it's an over provision, you have to go for departure. So sometimes we look at things and say, right, well, we need to do something a bit more here. But again, you have, because it's public purse and everything else, you have to actually make sure that it complies, and you have to do a risk assessment. So it's quite a long process to make sure that you don't do something that's not within the overall premise of the standard.
Thank you, Gary. I think it's just useful to explain. Sometimes we all use language that we just expect everybody to understand.
Yeah,
thank you. Next question that's come in. The removal of a false cutting between Brentwood Road and Howford Road has raised alarms in the Linford community, who are already very concerned about the level of noise, vibration and air quality. Steve, perhaps you can pick this up. What mitigation is in place in construction and final road design?
Okay, yes. So just a quick reminder why we're taking the false cutting away, there's the false embankment away. It's unfortunately that it was coincident with the location of a watercourse diversion. So we have an existing watercourse that we need to divert because it clashes with our proposed alignment at Lower Thames Crossing, and we couldn't have that false cutting embankment in the same location as the diverted watercourse. So I'm afraid the watercourse won out on that regard. But the false cutting in that area was really to be used as a visual screen to screen Lower Thames Crossing from the golf course side, looking southwest. And so we're planning to mitigate the loss of that sort of visual screen from the embankment by putting some planting there instead. So it wasn't solely there for noise mitigation purposes. There is a property that's very close to Brentford Road, and that will benefit from a specific noise barrier. In terms of Linford community residents, I don't think they'll see any effect from the loss of this this false cutting. It won't affect and change the noise in that area to where they are in the east. In terms of construction effects, this change will not change the construction impacts. What we're trying to do with those is it'll be set out in detail in a document called the Code of Construction Practice, which is a document which has to be submitted as part of our development consent order, and that will set out very detailed measures and requirements that the contractor must meet in order to minimize noise, vibration, air quality issues. So I hope that will be available soon for public viewing, and I hope that will reassure the Linford community that we're doing as much as we possibly can to mitigate those effects.
Thanks very much, Steve. Yes, that'll be available when we submit the development consent order application. Thank you. Another question now. Gary, one for you. Why can't the construction compound in Orsitt be relocated to the west side of the LTC, moving it away from the Baker Street residential area? A couple of people actually asked that question.
Right, the actual the construction of the A13 junction is very complicated. And I think we've got a number of construction compounds that will be needed to build LTC. The position is based on our construction requirements and providing access for our workers and material deliveries. The site near Baker Street is a small secondary site, which will typically include welfare facilities, materials and equipment. The location also provides access for the eastern side of LTC at that point. There is another small construction site which is located on the west side of LTC to provide access from that side. And I just think that the team looking at the construction actual strategy have actually is been really sort of the only location where we could sensibly fit in a compound. So I think it is. We have looked at the way the junction is being constructed, and that's been a site that's been allocated for that particular site construction compound.
Thanks very much, Gary. On a completely different subject now, the next question that's come in. The question is, can you confirm that motorcycles will be toll-free in line with your statement that charging will be the same as the Dartford crossing? Steve, the question about charging then, with particular reference to motorcycles, can you pick that up?
Yep, sure. Yes, the charging regime for Lower Thames Crossing will replicate that used at Dartford already. So motorcyclists will be able to use it free of charge, I believe, as they do at Dartford. So it's a like-for-like scheme.
Thank you very much for that. We've actually had quite a few questions come in this evening, which is great. We'll probably stay on a little later than planned after 8 o'clock. We're quite happy to do that and hope that you can stay with us so we can answer as many of your questions as possible. So moving on to the next question, Gary, one for you. Why are there no direct links from the docks at Tilbury and Gateway to the tunnel? All dock traffic wishing to use the tunnel has to travel via the A13. And this person is saying one incident on the A13 could close the tunnel and both docks. Can you share any more information about that?
Yeah, of course. We have got direct access from the 1089 northbound out of Tilbury, both northbound and southbound, onto the Lower Thames crossing. The DP World traffic will be able to access LTC, but they will go along the new section that's been widened from Manor Way to Orsett Cock and go underneath Orsett Cock roundabout, going westbound into London, and join LTC either northbound or southbound, and vice versa. Could come off LTC and join the A13 going back towards the port. So yes, we have got connectivity between the ports. We don't have connectivity southbound off LTC directly into the 1089, but that traffic would come down the M25 down to the junction 30 on the M25 using the A13 and use the existing connection to the 1089, which that section of the A13 between LTC and junction 30 will have less traffic on it because LTC has removed that traffic. Any traffic that we don't believe there is an awful lot of traffic coming from the south to go to Tilbury, but that traffic would normally just use the existing Dartford crossing. So LTC will be designed so as not to prevent any future link with if there was a connection at the Tilbury link road, we would not prevent any sort of link that could be added at a later date if there was one to go in. And Highways England have marked it in their pipeline for RIS2, which is a road investment strategy Road Investment Strategy 3, and that's between 2020 and 2025. So there is something in the pipeline looking at doing possibly a future connection at a later date. So Highways England are giving serious consideration to a new link road. However, it will need to be developed out of its own business case, so it doesn't form part of Lower Thames Crossing. It will be something that is being looked at in the, as I say, in the road investment strategy.
Thank you, Gary. Thank you for that long answer. Thank you. Another question now. The refinements that we're talking about in this consultation, there's a question, are these refinements a direct response to feedback received from the supplementary consultation that was held earlier on in the year? Steve, how can you respond to that?
Yeah, that very much so. It is a mixture, but yes, some of the changes that we've made, or some of these refinements, as we've called them, are very much from feedback from supplementary consultation. For example, the new footbridge that we're proposing over the A127 up at junction 29, the M25, that was something that we looked at again in direct response to feedback at supplementary consultation. So that's quite a good example. There are other things linked to non-motorised users, walkers, cyclists, equestrians, and the links that have been put in for those. So they're quite small refinements, hence the name. Other changes have been made because we've had sort of new technical information or new design data that's become available, and there is a continual dialogue with stakeholders. So a lot of the refinements that you see in this consultation are through the dialogue that we've had with the utility stakeholders in particular, and that has allowed us, for example, to reduce the amount of land that we're now looking to request. So yeah, very much, the supplementary consultation was very positive, and yes, we've built on that, and some of those, some of the feedback from that consultation has made it into these refinements we're presenting now.
Thank you, thank you. That's why it's important that people do take the time to respond to these consultations. So anybody who's thinking about responding, please do so. Another question has come in. This person says, quite simply, I have concerns of overflow traffic through East Tilbury. Gary, how would you respond to the person who has those concerns?
Yeah, there's only really two ways to access LTC via Thurrock. It's via the A1089 going north, so coming out of Tilbury Docks and going north, or via the A13 going westbound towards London. So those are really the only connections onto LTC. So there's no connections at East Tilbury. So I mean, when LTC will be opened, East Tilbury is forecast to see a reduction in traffic by up to about 20% in each direction in both the AM and PM peaks. This can be seen, I think it's figures 4.10 and 4.11 and 4.12 in the traffic modelling update that was presented at this supplementary consultation. So if you go onto the supplementary consultation website, there's a traffic modelling. It's a summary document that shows figures of what traffic flows are on each of those particular links. So it's figures 4.10, 4.11, and 4.12.
Thank you, thank you. And another question coming now, and again, it's around the kind of language that we use. Steve, a question for you. This person is asking, what is a gas pipeline compound and what will it look like? Specifically, they're talking about the one on Stanford Road in a fenced area. I think we've said it's 35 by 35. Can you explain what that is?
Yes, sure. It's so the compound will house equipment which will be used for the operation and maintenance of an existing gas pipeline in that area. our works are impacting on some of the equipment that's associated with that gas pipeline further west. So it needs to be there needs to be access for safe operation and maintenance a bit further east. The location chosen is just off Stamford Road, as you say. What will it look like? It's going to be a compound that's approximately 35 meters square, so 35 meters by 35 meters. There will be a perimeter fence to ensure security. And in fact, Gary and I were talking to the utilities engineer about this morning, and there was suggestion that the perimeter will be planted to help screen that facility. So yeah, I think any more specifics about the particular what does it look like and what does it mean to me, I think if you'd like, the person who's asked that question, if you'd like to phone our helpline, you can book a call with one of our utility experts and they can talk you through in a bit more detail. Just that the number, just so you know, is, in case you don't know, is 0300 123 5000. So I suggest perhaps if you want to know more, just book a call back and one of the utilities team can speak to you about it.
That's a good shout. Thank you, Steve. Thank you. Another question to come in now. We've said that we're going to use a borehole, and I never really thought about this question before. It's a really good one. Why use a borehole when you've got a river next to the excavation? This person's saying surely pumps are cheaper than mains work and wouldn't tap the local water table.
All right.
Gary,
yeah, shall I take that one? Yeah, we've looked at options of extracting water from the Thames, and it was proposed that the option of the Linford borehole and water supply from nearby mains was a better option in terms of reliability and water quality. We do need clean water because for the operations of a fire suppression system for the tunnel, so we will need to have clean water, and so upgrading the water.
Don't know if we might have lost Gary's sound there. Apologies if you've lost Gary's sound, as I know I have.
Yes, I have too, Sarah.
Subtitles. Unfortunately, we're not able to transcribe what Gary is saying. I think we'll move on to the next question. Apologies, Gary. Not even sure if you could hear me saying that. We'll move on. We'll try Steve. Hopefully Steve's sound's working. Steve, we've had a couple of questions about noise barriers. Someone would like more detail on the construction of noise barriers. Specifically, why has Orsic Golf Course got a noise barrier of 6 meters high when there are no houses nearby, whereas Baker Street's only got a 1 meter high noise barrier in a residential area? And furthermore, why haven't Whitecroft's care home got any noise barriers at all? These are really quite specific questions about specific areas. Steve, are you able to help?
Yes. Can you hear me okay?
Absolutely. Yeah, I can.
Fine.
I hope
Good. I'm obviously not afflicted with the same issue as Gary. Yeah, so the noise barriers, since supplementary consultation earlier this year, the environmental team and the acoustic specialists have been doing some detailed modelling based on the alignment of Lower Thames Crossing and the forecast traffic figures that we're expecting, together with the topography that we're proposing. That's the landform around Lower Thames Crossing. They've put all that information into a model, and then they've tested the anticipated levels of noise from various receptors or at various receptors. So at various communities or properties along the route, they've tested to see what the predicted noise levels will be. And the result of that work has been the noise barriers that are presented in this design refinement consultation. So if there isn't a noise barrier where you'd expect to see one, it's because the noise modelling that we've done has shown that it's not anticipated to be required. However, this is a consultation and we very much welcome your feedback, and we will certainly be looked at, areas that need to be flagged up to be checked, double checked, make sure that we've done the modelling correctly and not missed any areas. Just specifically on the question with regards to the 6 metre high barrier at the golf course, it's not, that barrier is not to protect or mitigate noise to the golf course. It's to one specific property which is very close to Lower Thames Crossing, and so at the present time there is a barrier proposed around that property. So it's not for the golf course per se, it's for that particular property. But please do feedback your thoughts on those noise barrier locations. Oh, in terms of construction, that was part of the question, wasn't it? They're going to be standard forms of noise barrier, so they will look very much like your typical fence in many locations. Some of those may also include some planting to help visually screen them. It depends on the location. Some noise barriers that are attached to structures like the viaduct, like Mardyke, they'll be part of the viaduct structure itself, so you won't actually sort of notice it as a noise barrier as such. It'll be built into the structure. I hope does that answer all the points, Sarah?
Quite a detailed question. Thank you, Steve. Yeah, you got through a lot there. Thank you. Right, I'm hoping that Gary's mic is working. We'll try Gary with another question. Gary, I hope you can hear me as well. Gary, a question for you. Is there any improvement in the vehicle movements and operating hours during construction?
Can you hear me okay?
Yes, you're back. Excellent.
You're back, great. Okay, thanks. Yeah, the movements of vehicles isn't covered actually by this consultation, but we continue to listen carefully to feedback from stakeholders regarding vehicle movements and operating hours during construction. We will agree in the construction management plan before any construction work begins, and so that will form part of the sort of the DCO going forward.
Okay, thank you. I'm just going to check in quickly with the team to see if we've got some time for some more questions. There is one more question. There's a question here about which map shows where the emergency areas are along the LTC and how far apart are they? Gary, is there any information you can offer on that?
Yeah, I'd most probably have to check. They're either in the GAs or they might be in, which is map book.
The general arrangements.
Yeah, the general arrangement plans. Or they're in the engineering plans. So it's either map book 1 or map book 3. And we've got the spacing intervals are between 800 meters and 1.6, with the exception of the tunnel, where we've got actually technology to actually perform the safety aspects there. We've also assessed spacing in most of these areas at intervals of 1.2 kilometers. Emergency areas will be spaced at intervals of between 800 and 1, with the exception of the tunnel.
Okay, thank you. So I'm told we've got time for a couple more questions. This is one I think for Steve. It says, on page 86, you say the development boundary has gone from over 26 kilometres to slightly below 23 kilometres in paragraph 2. And then in paragraph 3, we say, in quotes, additional land along the LTC route would be required permanently. So this person is asking, how can both be true? Steve, can you explain?
I'm not sure I can pick up the specifics on that one. I'd have to look into it.
Have the guide in front of you.
Yeah, if we go to another question, and I can quickly read the guide to pick that up.
Okay, thank you. I'm also getting a little bit of clarification about where that extra information is that Gary alluded to about the emergency refuge areas. They are in map book 3, if anybody wants to know where to go and find those. They're in map book 3. So I think we've got one more question now, time for one more. Could you give me an indication on the map where the 1,000 plus workers on the LTC would be housed in temporary accommodation, as Thurrock has a major shortage of housing? And this person is saying the last thing we need is more people living in houses of multiple occupancy. I don't know which one of you wants to pick that up. Gary, Steve, either one of you, whichever you'd prefer.
Yeah,
Gary, could you pick that up while I'm looking up the previous question?
Yeah, I think where possible, recruitment from local communities reduce the need for extra housing. So we've carried out a study to look at local supply, and we'll work with the local authorities to fill those jobs. If any working accommodation is needed, it will be included in the Code of Construction Practice. So we will consult locally with the authorities in developing the Code of Construction Practice. So essentially, we'll be looking at that sort of during the next stage of the scheme.
And I think that's key to it. I think that any solutions that we try and find to make sure that the workforce who are either local or come from the wider region have somewhere to live, it will be worked out with the local authorities so that everybody's needs can be best met. Thank you for that, Gary. I think there's maybe a little bit of information come through for Steve to help him clarify on some of the development boundary question that you had earlier, Steve.
I think if I can pick it up now, I mean, my reading of this, I think what we're trying to say is overall there's a reduction in the area of land that we now require compared to that we presented at supplementary consultation. But that doesn't mean that there aren't new areas that may be required on a permanent basis. So it could be that there's some areas that were previously outside of the development boundary that are now required. But the paragraph 2 on page 86 that's referred to is basically stating that the overall land take for the scheme as a whole is showing a reduction of about 3 kilometres squared. Okay. I hope that answers the question. If it doesn't, I'm sorry, perhaps the person who asked it could just feel free to email us or ask for a callback service.
Great, okay. Great. And I am really conscious that we've overrun on time, and we did that deliberately so that we could take as many of your questions as possible. And our apologies to those people whose questions we haven't been able to answer this evening. We knew there lots were going to come in, and we knew we probably wouldn't have enough time. So therefore, we have open those telephone lines to people who want to actually book a call back so they can get a detailed answer to their specific questions. So do make sure that you book a call back, go to the website or ring that 0300 123 5000 number so that you can book a specific response to get your questions answered that you haven't managed to get answered this evening. And once again, I'm sorry, we've run out of time. So that concludes the question and answer session for today's webinar. If you'd like to attend another webinar in the future, you're more than welcome, and you can see the dates and times on the screen on your website now. And of course, all that information is on our website, and I'll repeat the URL one more time. It's www.lowerthamescrossing.co.uk/design/consultation. Okay. Right, as a quick reminder on how you can respond to the consultation, please do go to our website or post us a response or simply email us. And if you know anyone who doesn't have access to the internet, they're also able to phone us on the number we've repeated quite a few times over the last hour or so, but I'll do it once more, 0300 123 5000, and make sure that they can provide a response to the consultation over the phone. Okay, that wraps it up, I think, for today and for this evening. I'd like to say a huge thank you on my behalf and on behalf of my fellow panelists, Steve and Gary. Thank you all very much for taking time out to join us this evening to discuss these proposals for the Lower Thames Crossing. We do appreciate you taking an interest, and we look forward to receiving your responses to the design refinement consultation. So on that note, I'll say to everybody, please stay safe and enjoy the rest of your evening. Bye-bye.
Goodbye.